I'm just gonna say it. This one gets a little weird. Enjoy. One of my favorite YouTubers of all time is Jazza. If you don't know Jazza, I highly recommend you give their humongous channel a look. They make fun and creative videos, usually revolving around some sort of art. I've always wanted to do something like that for this channel, but my artistic talent is not great. It's kind of, yeah. Without the necessary talent and training to create the videos like Jazza, I turned to his app, the Arty Games app. In this app, you can do character challenges, color challenges, environment challenges, copy challenges, scribble challenges, and so much more. For the purpose of this video though, we are going to be focusing on two challenges, character and environment. But Flynn, how are you possibly going to make an art app relevant to your channel? Are you going to make it even more disjointed from its usual gaming and writing focus? Yes, I mean no. I mean what? Oh, yeah. So what are we going to do? Well, we're going to grab a setting from the environment challenge, grab a character from the character challenge, and write a scene. This is my first time doing this, so if it crashes and burns, it's all Jazza's fault. This is either going to be amazing or absolute trash. I don't think we have a middle ground here. Shit. Let's do this. Pull up the game, Arty Games app by Jazza. Let's go with single game, scribble, environment challenge. Let's start with the environment. What are we gonna get? Here we go. And it's going to be a playground that has been invaded by aliens and features a shard of the moon. Yeah, so that's our thing that we're doing. Okay. Fun. Okay. Let's see what character we're going to get to add to our setting, which is aliens in a playground with a shard of the moon. An actress who is barfing rainbows falling off a cliff. This is gonna be hard. Stay tuned, maybe. Well, let's yeah. Let's do this thing, okay? Let's do this thing. We got this. Okay. Hold on. There's more. So that was a crazy way to end. That was dumb. Like there's all gonna be all kinds of like shaking and you know what? Hey, but there's more. I did more to make this an even weirder thing. I went to Twitter, and on Twitter, I put up a poll. That poll was, what theme or setting should we go with? And these were the results. Coming in absolutely last was the real world setting, which I blame no one for. And then second, probably the absolute easiest way to have done this, sci-fi. Sci-fi would have been stupid easy. But yeah, that wasn't picked. 42.5% of the vote went to sci-fi, but it did not win. The winner was Fantasy with 52.5% of the vote. Thank you all so much for voting. Really appreciate it. I hope you enjoy what your votes have created. This is your fault. Kinzen's three eyes blinked out of sync. Webbed fingers clung to the steering wheel while the rest of his crew tugged and pulled at the ropes guiding the sails. The Etherbrake was one of the finest ships in the Farsail fleet, but they'd never experienced a storm quite like this one. "Aim for the moon! We'll take respite there and let the storm pass." "Aye, aye!" The crew responded in unison. They were some of the finest Kevaks ever to crew a ship. Kinzen's twin tongues mingled together as his lips pursed. If they failed now, it would be his fault. The ship lurched and swayed. Solar storms disrupted the flow of magic that Etherbrake and other vessels like it relied upon to travel the stars. They were just one of many reasons these journeys were so unpredictable and dangerous. "Steady! Aye!" The bow dipped. "Up! Up!" Loud grunts from below heralded another adjustment, and the bow leveled off just enough. "Brace!" Kinzen followed his own advice and wrapped his forearms around the steering column. With a great thud, the Etherbrake crashed into the dusty surface of the moon. The crackle of wood breaking under the pressure made Kinzen wince, but at least they'd landed. The Etherbrake rocked to a halt, and Kinzen rose from his position to assess the damage. His entire crew had made it through, a good sign, but his heart fell seeing the breakage all over the vessel. Boards buckled and splintered all over the deck and the sides. Repairs would be difficult and time-consuming. "Captain, we've got incoming!" "What?" Kinzen looked up and cursed. A chunk of debris followed the wake of the Etherbrake, darting along the magical currents. It promised to be near enough a direct hit. "Inside!" Kinzen hopped down to the main deck as his crew poured into the lower bowels of the ship. Kinzen was the last below decks as he made it by the skin of his antennae. The hatch closed and the entire ship jolted. Kinzen lost his grip on the ladder and went flying. He crashed into the back wall. Brilliant pain preceded numbness in complete darkness. "Captain, is he dead? Captain! I think he's dead. Captain!" Kinzen was sluggish to open his eyes. When he did, he hurried to close them again, for bright light stung them. "Turn off the lights," he said. "Oi, Captain, I can't turn off the sun," his first mate said. "The sun?" Kinzen blinked, his three eyes open again. The first thing he noticed was how the ship, already in a sad state, had been torn asunder by the impact. The entire top deck was just gone, allowing the bright light to spill in. "Torvo and Mirix did all they could to bring us in safely, Captain. Torvo is resting," his first mate said. "And Mirix, The downcast look on his first mate's face and the crewmate beside him was all Kinzen needed to see. With effort, he rose despite the protests from his crew to stay down. Everything hurt, especially the back of his head, but there was work to be done. He needed to see where they were. Kinzen, with his first mate's help, hobbled to the side of the ship. Looking over the edge, he saw the surface of the moon where they'd landed, sheared from the face of the celestial body from the impact. Myrix did that. She shore off part of the moon to protect our landing, Torvo said, coming up beside Kinzen. The mage was only in his mid-50s, still an adolescent for the long-lived Kevix, but with his shoulders drooped, his back arched, and his thin arms trembling as they held the gnarled staff he carried, he belied that youth. Torvo, she did what any of us would have done. Or the Enclave. Or the Enclave, Kinzen repeated under his breath. Our duties are far from ended, Captain, Torvo said as he pointed a wavering hand up. Kinzen followed the direction his friend pointed, and his mouth parted. Now that he'd adjusted to the light of the sun, he could see the horror above. What beasts could have created such towering structures? Wooden walls bridged the gaps between brightly colored green and yellow pillars. At one end, a purple cylinder that could have encompassed the entirety of Kinzen's home planet followed a curving path down to the ground. The opposite end saw a vibrant bridge with two monstrous chains that suspended to a platform the size of the Kevik docks. What fresh hell have we found? Kinzen asked. One Myrix gave her life to bring us to, Torvo answered. Australia swished her tail back and forth, occasionally slapping it against her haunch. Her eyes twitched, threatening to crack the neatly applied makeup. She'd been waiting on her co-star for a solid 45 minutes, and this wasn't the first time she'd been kept waiting, either. How did I let my agent talk me into this? She asked aloud and looked up at the cliff where her next scene would take place. It was all so cliché, so gauche. Another pointless play that would see perhaps an audience of 3 or 4. The director is said to be a visionary, or a goblin, the halfling said beside her. She stood on a stool and ran a brush delicately through Estrella's long mane of hair that stretched from her head down to her equine torso. Once upon a time, Estrella had been one of the premier actors of the realm. She had regularly received invitations to perform for royalty all across Tubia, and even a few disorganized missives from the well-known but poorly mapped world of Twitchinden. All of that had changed after the incident. It's unprofessional. We should have been rehearsing days ago, but the bloody oaf has some prior commitment or some such. A bridge to Amazonia, the halfling said. Yes, some other uselessly bloated project, I'm sure. Where is he? I'm sure he'll be along shortly. He better. Come, you can continue stroking my hair while I run lines up there in position. Estrella motioned toward the set piece and glanced back at the halfling, which stopped her cold. The halfling paused at the look in the middle of moving to mount her like a horse. Excuse me, Estrella shrieked. Sorry. The halfling scrambled back so fast she fell from the stool onto her butt. Do you make a habit of climbing on the backs of every actor? No. Why would you think you could with me? Estrella stamped her hoof and folded her arms over her chest, glaring at the shrinking form of the halfling. I used to ride ponies. Do I look like a bloody pony to you? I'm a centaur, you cretin. Get out of my sight. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry. Estrella glared at the retreating halfling until she was long gone before she began walking up the wood and metal construction. She at least had to admire the craftsmanship of the stagehand. Even on larger productions, she'd never seen such a well-crafted cliff. Gordy hustled down the cobble road. Well, hustled as much as he could. The thick-skinned, wide-set troll took several pauses every few blocks to catch his breath. He was not much for running long distances, even in his youth. Now that he was older, all of the year's battles with fame-seeking knights had caught up to him. It was just another reason why in his retirement he'd sought out a less stressful career. So far, though, acting had not been the leisurely activity he expected. Australia is going to be mad again, he muttered under his breath, pushing out his jaw so his broken bottom tusk perked up into his eye line. He was staring at it, or more specifically, staring at a new chip in the ivory-colored protrusion, when he caught a glimmer out of the corner of his eye on the playground. Curious, Gordy detoured into the empty grounds. His massive feet sank deep into the sand next to the playset. He crossed over to the base of the slide, where he looked down and smiled. Between the slide and the swing set was a shimmering rock about the size of his thumb. Australia likes pretty things. Maybe if I get her this, she'll forgive me for being late. The troll scooped up the rock and tucked it in his vest pocket, resuming his run to the set. Unease turned to abject panic in a moment. Captain Kinzen had done all he could to calm and restrain his crew when the foul creature approached. His hopes that it would ignore them faded the moment it reached its filthy hand down and lifted up not just the ship, but the entire chunk of the moon which it rested on. They'd been plunged into darkness, which was now where they sat, huddled around the faint glow of Torvo's staff. The beast doesn't know we exist. It appeared interested in the moon shard, not us, Kinzen said. We should kill it, his first mate countered. How do you plan to kill such a behemoth? Kinzen said. What do you suggest then? It might eat us. Probably, Torvo said. Probably? The first mate croaked. Stop scaring the crew, Torvo. We don't know what this thing wants. It might be peaceful. Torvo narrowed his eyes at Kinzen. Whatever its intent, it's taking us somewhere. That much was certain. The whole of the ship swayed back and forth, threatening to dislodge from its crash site. Kinzen stared across at Torvo for a long time before speaking. You have my permission to attack should you perceive a threat, Torvo, but I want to see what this creature has in store. They may be peaceful. They may be able to help us fix the damage to our ship. Understood, Captain. Estrella turned at the sound of heavy footsteps. Her eyes narrowed and she shot a hand out at Gordy. You're late again, Gordy. Not once in my entire career have I ever had to wait with such frequency for another actor, if one can even call a novice like yourself that. Gordy winced at the stinging words and glanced away. I'm sorry, Estrella. Miss Roche, to you. I didn't mean to keep you waiting. Let me make it up to you. Look, I found this and thought you'd like it. He fished in his pocket and pulled out a glimmering gray rock and presented it to her. Her glare lessened and she reached out. What is this? A rock? She took it and brought it close to her face. It's pretty, and since you're pretty, I thought you'd like it. Estrella glanced up from the rock across at Gordy and her face softened. Thank you, Gordy. But you must be on time, pretty things or not. You disrespect your fellow actors. You disrespect the director. Nay, you disrespect the very production itself. As she spoke, she pointed the stone at him, emphasizing each point with a flick of her wrist. Gordy nodded along and he was about to respond when a bright beam arced out of the stone. It hit Estrella squarely in the mouth and she fell back, dropping it. Estrella staggered and put a hand over her mouth. Her chestnut eyes went wide and her cheeks bulged. Estrella, I mean, Miss Roche. The centaur actor made a low gurgle. Her eyes, already wide, began to water with her eyebrows pushing toward the center of her forehead. Are you okay? Estrella's mouth opened and out shot a brilliant rainbow. It blinded the troll who stumbled forward. His foot slipped off the side of the set piece and he fell. In a panic, he flailed his arms out, trying to grab onto anything. What he managed to snag was Estrella's hair, who gave a strangled cry and turned toward Gordy, blasting him in the face again with the rainbow. He screeched and lurched back. The next thing he knew, he was falling through the open air. The thick-skinned brute slammed hard into the set, wood cracking beneath him. Gordy's breath left his lungs and he gasped. He had just enough time for his eyes to clear to see the falling form of the centaur actor, a hoof leading the way. Oh no! Gordy braced right before the hoof hit his face and everything went dark. When Gordy woke, his face stung and his back ached. He rubbed his eyes open and stared up at a fuzzy figure which gradually came into focus above him. It was the director and he was wearing a wide grin. Good! You're alive! Perfection! We'll be doing that again! Brilliant! Brilliant! Whose idea was it? Such exceptional improv. I didn't know you had it in ya. The goblin tapped Gordy on both cheeks and pushed them together. Now, how do we get the centaur to stop puking rainbows long enough for the reset of the scene?